Hi there, this is Johnny Meatsack. No, actually, we are all Johnny Meatsack, but in this incarnation, I am Miguel Connor, and good to see everybody. Since you are seeing my aging Gen X face, you know it's a special show. And once again, I am making public one of our Finding Hermes presentations. The Finding Hermes program, as many of you know, is that bi-monthly meeting where we have a wonderful and electric Q&A plus a presentation having to do with Gnostic spirituality practice or some other heresy. This one I'm making public is from the amazing Jonathan Barlow Gee. And it's actually pretty recent. He did a presentation on magical Kabbalah, sort of a sequel from our recent show where he talked about the tree of death and the left-hand Kabbalah, making it public as a sort of promotion. As perhaps you know, beyond the Finding Hermes program, you can do a one-on-one with me if you want to talk about Gnostic thought, addiction recovery, or anything on your mind. You get all the benefits from being a subscriber. But again, we meet once a month for this. So check it out, and again, please support. I am mentioning this now because, as I mentioned in the recent show on the Wounded Healer with Eric Good, one of my video platforms, Rockfin, got completely nuked. I went in there and suddenly I am no longer have access as a creator. All my videos there, my account, it's all gone. And I know this happens with the internets. It's still a bit of a wild west, and who knows what can last or doesn't last. The issue is that Rockfin used to pay me for views with this thing they call the RAE token. Don't want to sound too much like a boomer. But it was a crypto token, and then I would trade that for other crypto, and then I could trade that for dollars to help out. That's gone. And hundreds of dollars are gone. So, and I have no idea how to access this, and I've requested or I've reached out to customer support. I know this is happening too to other creators like my friend Beth Martins, but right now nothing is happening, and all that dough is gone. I know things are going to work out, and again, it's just the way it is with the internet in this age of Hermes and these times of the tricksters. But yeah, please help out if you can. There might not be a lot of content for the next week or so. I am traveling to Boulder, Colorado. I am going to be at Gaia TV on Open Minds with the also amazing Regina Meredith. So I'll be traveling next week, but worry not, because March is going to be electric. Some of my guests include Mitch Horowitz, Tobias Churton, David Block, Susan Chang, and Saul Luckman. So there's going to be some amazing shows and topics, from tarot to the Nephilim to the Book of Enoch to surreal Platonism to so much more. So please support, and let's keep the lights of the Pleroma on. That's all I got, and enough of my drivel, as I used to say. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. Let's check out Jonathan's amazing, I use that word a lot, electric, fantastic, nuclear, horror show, whatever you want to call it. I think you're going to enjoy his presentation. And as always, Jonathan has some really disturbing, but yes, amazing insights, like how old Kabbalah is. It might be the primordial religion, but see for yourself and enjoy. Welcome, everybody, officially to the Gnostic spirituality practice and healing session for February. Yes, it is February. It's quite a long month already, but here we are in 2025. And thanks everybody for showing up. If you're live, and of course, if you're watching the recording, I hope you're enjoying it too. With us today, it is a pleasure to have an individual whose research I truly admire, who has that eye for the reality behind reality. Sometimes when people ask me, well, how do you know that person researches sound? I say, oh, they've been banned on YouTube. That's usually, there's a 80% chance that if YouTube has suppressed or banned you, you're on the right path because the powers that be can only allow you can't get too close to that sun as Icarus. So, Jonathan, thanks for showing up tonight and taking us on a journey through the Kabbalah.
Well, thank you so much, Miguel. I'm pleased to be here, and I look forward to speaking to y'all.
Awesome. Well, first, for those who may not know about you, even though you've been on the show 3 or 4 times, or just how did you become interested in the Kabbalah, and why do you find it, why do you find so much value in it, at least to research it?
The Kabbalah is what I've found to be metaphysical through thread that connects all known uh, religious, mystical, and metaphysical systems of the past. So, for example, the ancient Egyptian religion uh, has the orientation of the cubes in the tombs of the pharaohs is associated with the east-west and north-south axes, and this has its relevance in the Kabbalah, in the orientations of the cube of space being the cube above and the cube below being or the cube of space being the cube below and the cube above being the cube of time. Uh, but we'll have to talk more about that in a minute when I have some diagrams to show more with
Sure.
that.
Of course, anytime you want to whip the diagrams, I'll do the share screen. And again, we do have a Zoom function in Zoom, at least
Oh, wonderful.
theoretically, we'll see what happens. But okay, the conventional wisdom, conventional Sophia, tells us that the Kabbalah was like a 13th century Jewish appendage that came out in Spain and all that. What do you think, or is the Kabbalah even older, or is it sort of a Rosetta Stone that kind of breaks things in the past and the present and the fourth dimension?
Well, certainly the written history of the Kabbalah dates to before the Sephardic era of Spain, uh, to the Sefer Yetzirah of the first century AD and the Bahir of the first century AD, and other similar works of in the lifetime of Shimeon Bar Yochai uh, that were later transcribed as the Zohar during the Sephardic era. But all of these things took place or were written down first in the first and second centuries AD. So the written history of Kabbalah definitely goes back at least 2,000 years, and it predates itself in the writings to even before that. It talks about the Sefer Yetzirah having been originally an oral tradition passed down from Abraham, the patriarch Abraham, which would predate it by at least another 500 to 1,000 years or so.
So what we have is basically very ancient, maybe Solomonic magic. I mean, again, probably a tradition that's primordial and probably was suppressed and controlled by the cult of Yahweh and the powers that be. Could we say that?
Well, I'm not sure if it was suppressed and controlled particularly. It was definitely uh, covered up and censored, but it was still flourishing in an underground current throughout all of subsequent history. Um, if you want to, we could pull up the first slide, and I could speak on
Sure.
what the modern interpretation of the Kabbalah looks like to most people nowadays is the
Can everybody? All right. Can you see it, Jonathan?
um do we have the slides that were from the email that I sent?
Yeah, those are the ones. Let's say. Let me go down.
And they were numbered, so it should be after these, because those are all preloaded from the last
Really?
show that we did. Yes.
Did I mess up? Okay. Oh, okay. Never mind. Yes, you're right. I had it. I pulled down the next one. All right. Let's do
There we
this
go.
again. There you go. I got it.
That's it. So this is what the uh, majority of modern Kabbalists understand the tree of the Kabbalah to look like nowadays. Some of them are devoted to it uh, almost with zealotry, to thinking that it's the end all be all of all possible arrangements for the traits on the tree, because it is the most recent. And if you believe in the uh, progressive theory that this is a form of technology that doesn't err and doesn't diminish itself, then over time it can only improve. So the most modern would be the most perfected. But that's only one theory about such things, and it's not necessarily accurate in this case. Uh, the Kabbalah that we see in this diagram has Malkuth. The kingdom is divided into four elements. Then the next seven Sephiroth above it are assigned to the planets, the classical seven classical planets of antiquity. And then Chakma, wisdom, is assigned to the firmament or the fixed heavens, as opposed to the seven planets being the mobile heavens. And in this way, it duplicates the roles of the planets in the Sephirotic uh, role that the planets already have in the paths. In classical traditional Kabbalah, the paths on the tree of life that are represented in modern times by the tarot cards are represented by the three elemental phases, salt, sulfur, and mercury, uh, and by the seven planets, the seven classical planets of antiquity, as well as by the 12 signs of the zodiac. Does anybody have any questions so far?
No, let me continue. But isn't and I know we've discussed this before. I think yeah, when the Kabbalah, like you said, this is the most modern, as you said, tool. But before I mean, the seer had different versions of the Kabbalah. It didn't look like this. It depended on the vision, and it's changed throughout time, right?
Exactly. This is what it looks like in the late 20th century, but there have been countless, almost countless iterations of it prior to this. And I'm sure there will be countless iterations further to come from it, because it's said to be a tree because it grows and changes over time, just like the branches and roots of the tree growing and changing and evolving over time.
Right. And would you say on the question about Gnosticism, the great Gershom Scholem called Kabbalah Jewish Gnosticism. What would you say to this? Could we say it's a form of Gnosticism, or what say you?
Well, in terms of Gnosticism's origins historically, Kabbalah definitely predates this, predates Gnosticism by centuries, if not millennia. But it's at the time of Gnosticism, Kabbalah was definitely the most rarefied form, the most reified form of Hebrew study of Torah, which at the time constituted the equivalent in the Nazarene and the Essene sects of essentially Gnostic beliefs that were Hellenic and Hebrew syncretic beliefs that were a
Mhm.
fusion of Greek and Egyptian Coptic, as well as Hebrew beliefs that were popular at the time, but were less uh, exact in their studies.
And historically, do you see is there a hotbed for Kabbalah? I mean, I'm assuming the Levant, or do you really does it like gain momentum in other places like Alexandria?
Well, let's go ahead and pull up the second slide,
Sure.
and I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what I think is the origin of Kabbalah that we know of now.
Mhm.
Um, as far as we can date back written history, it goes back about 6,000 years ago at the very earliest, that we can say definitely there was forms of written expression. Uh, Kabbalah predates that. It goes to prehistoric times when before there was writing, there were only the original oral transmitted myths, and these were only beginning to be concocted and even passed along at this time. So we have about 12,500 BC and the Younger Dryas event. Some say it was associated with six cometary impact fragments, six
Mhm.
cometary fragments that impacted on the planet and set us back a bit, so to speak, in a population bottleneck temporarily. But that may have kickstarted the end of the last ice age as well, causing rapid melting of the glaciers that had covered North America. The result of that was that in modern Australia, which at the time was a larger island with a much closer proximity to the also lower sea level uh, landmass of Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia. Um, that was the primary center for human population around then. So this was before Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. This was before the Kurgan culture. This is the origins of the Kurgan culture and the Indo-European language base. In Oceania, in uh, what we now call Australia, but in the continental landmass that we have named historically Sunda and Sahul, uh, and the archipelago of islands that were in between Sunda and Sahul. There was uh, a centralized population of early humans that created the majority of the myths that spread then in the Indo-European languages throughout the subcontinent of India, into the Levant, and into Egypt and Africa, and eventually into the Mediterranean, into Greece, etc. But these were the original myths of the creation of the world, the creation of the first tree, the creation of the first man and the first woman, and then the tricking of the first family by trickster, deceptive um, demons, as it were, and then a war in heaven between the good and evil elemental spirits. And then finally, they described the Great Deluge. And this is all in E.J. Michael Witzel's book, Origins of the World's Mythologies. It's very well researched and traced out there. But he notes that these myths that constituted essentially everything in the book of Genesis, at least later on, that these earliest myths lacked a Messiah concept or the mythology that
Mhm.
would be related to the prophecies of a Messiah. Uh, Kabbalah itself at this time was just represented by a string game called Cat's Cradle. And you would take a loop of string and wrap it in between your fingers and then interlace your fingers again and again with the string until eventually it created a lattice-like structure, such as we can see here. And in this particular structure, in this particular looped structure, there are 22 intersections or loops of the string around itself. So it can be compared directly to the later 22 paths on the Tree of Life of Kabbalah. So if we trace this back to Oceania and what we could call nowadays Lemuria,
Mhm.
um, in pre-end of the last ice age era times, um, then we've got to trace down to at least before the beginning of written history. But if it existed even before that time as well, we can't really be sure or understand in what form it might have existed. And we could speculate, the 10 fingers and the 10 Sephiroth being an obvious place to start with that. But we can't be certain, for example, the number of knuckles, and in modern palmistry, the number of knuckles can be associated with the 12 signs of the zodiac, the mounds on the palm with the planets, and the thumb and lifeline can be associated with the three phases of matter. But it's impossible to say because there wasn't written history at the time, and there's no remaining evidence like the cat's cradle game that we can compare to modern versions to say that palmistry as we understand it now is definitely a precursor to the most ancient Kabbalah.
Fascinating. Whoa, that is primordial. It's almost, yeah. So many questions. You want to look at some of the other slides, or
Sure, we could pull up the next one.
sure. That's we got a herd of Sephiroth here.
Right, right. What we see here is the Gra arrangement of the Tree of Life diagram. Now, the Tree of Life is called that nowadays. It was this same diagram represented what had been called the Tree of Knowledge in Eden before we were exiled,
Mhm.
and it had been the forbidden fruit. It had been the plant that was forbidden to us to eat from, and then we ate from it and gained knowledge about right and wrong in hindsight, because then we realized that we had done something wrong, which we had never done before. And so then we came to understand the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. After the exile, this was given to us exclusively to eat, and the tree of immortality, the original tree of life, was removed and placed in Eden, beyond our reach, guarded by an angel with a flaming sword. So the modern tree of life diagram is actually a tree of knowledge diagram in Eden. And this is the Gra version of the tree of life diagram. So the original tree of life that we looked at, the Boda Builders of the Adytum Naples arrangement that we looked at first, that's the modern, more popular arrangement. It's based on what's called the RE version of the arrangement of the Sephiroth into the Tree of Life diagram. The RE version was given by Isaac Luria, uh, the blind prophet, and there's some speculation that he may have done um, this to obfuscate the actual shape of the Kabbalah
Mhm.
and to hide it from competitive Sabbateans and other sects of Messianic Hebrews at the time. Um, so the Gra version came later. It was attributed to the Vilna Gaon, I believe, who was in the 1500s, I think. But in any event, perhaps 1400s, but in any event, the Gra version is technically chronologically a later version of the Tree of Life diagram, but I speculate it may be closer to an approximation of the original truer form of or the truest form of the diagram, its original intention. So here the Gra diagram of the Tree of Life is depicted on the left. You can see on the paths are attributed the signs of the zodiac and the planets and the elements of the phases of matter, salt, sulfur, and mercury along the linear paths. Along in the Sephiroth themselves, in the vertex circles, there's the English names, the translations of the Hebrew names of the Sephiroth into English phonetic sounds, and under that, the translations of the meanings of these terms into English terms. So, for example, you would have Tifereth is beauty, Chesed is Mercury, Gevra is courage,
Right.
Yesod foundation, and all of that. In the middle one, there's Hebrew letters as opposed to English letters for the phonetic pronunciations of the Sephirotic names, and Hebrew letters for the names of the paths or the signs of the paths. So um, instead of Aquarius, you would have uh, what would that be? Heh. Yes.
Right.
And then instead of Leo, Kaf. Instead of Virgo, you would have Yod, and instead of Gemini, you would have Kaf, and so forth, or Quaff. And then in the middle diagram here also, it starts introducing the gematria letter number equivalencies for the Sephiroth themselves. So Tifereth in Hebrew adds up to the gematria sum 1081, 1081. Uh, Chesed, Mercy adds up to 72. Gevra, Courage adds up to 216, and so forth. And then in the final diagram on the far right, these numbers have been broken down further into their um, greatest common factors and least common denominators in terms of prime numbers that can't be divided any further, and numbers that can be expressed as exponents. So 72, for example, the number of Chesed, the gematria of Chesed, Mercy, is 2 to the third times 3 to the second. Um, those are the essentially the lowest common denominators and greatest common factors that can be extracted from 72. Then the Gematria sums are given for the Hebrew letters and signs of the zodiac and seven planets, etc. So, for example, instead of Leo, there would be, or Teth, it would be 9. Instead of Virgo or Yod, it would be 10, and etc. Um, and that's basically a collection of the Gra diagrams that I've worked with myself over the last several years since about 2004, um, trying to assign the right attributes to the right locations on the diagram. Finally, I've come up with using the 12 zodiac signs as the 12 diagonals.
Mm-hmm.
The three elemental phases of matter is the three horizontals, and then the seven planets as seven of the eight possible um, vertical lines.
Fascinating. All right, we shall go to the next one. Got some
Yeah.
cube action here.
So this would be just a depiction of the paths themselves on the tree of life diagram and color coded.
Mm-hmm.
So here we see Aquarius would be yellow waves on a blue background. Leo would be a yellow lion glyph on a dark blue background. The sun glyph would be purple on a yellow background, and etc. Um, all of this can be extracted in the same way as the Gra diagrams were in the last slide,
Right.
except that here we see them color coded and here we see them as two separate cubes apart from one another. So, uh, as Kabbalah came together over time, what began to form was a school that combined the Hekalat Merkava or Divine Throne Chariot literature tradition with the Etz Chaim or the Tree of Life literature tradition. And these came together in around the Gnostic era, so around 2,000 years ago.
Uh,
And at that point, what we're looking at now was basically an understood aspect of traditional metaphysical expression for higher dimensional forms, and in specific as the body of God Himself. So, in a metaphysical sense, we can't understand God, we can't comprehend God. God is an ineffable idea to us,
right.
but we can have a reflection or a shadow or an echo of His presence in the form of higher dimensional forms, things that can exist only in a dimension outside of and greater than our own material universe itself. So, a lot of what Gnosticism dealt with was how to escape the three dimensions of the space universe into the energy of the temporal dimension, the fourth spatial dimension of the time factor, the time universe. And again, this comes back to the lower cube being the space cube, the upper cube being the time cube, because together conjoined, they're actually just one cube over time. So it represents a cube and then the motion of that cube over time until it's transformed into a different cube. At
Right.
its most fundamental level, the Kabbalah is basically just a double qubit representation of time using simple three-dimensional geometry.
That's really well said. Well put. All
Thank you.
right.
So here would be these cubes unfolded into their Calvary cross net uh, arrangements. Uh, we can see, for example, the moon glyph being yellow and purple is expressed here in the crux or the elbow, as it were, the armpit of the lower cube, which is unfolded on the right as the inverted cross or the upside down Calvary cross. And the cube on the left is unfolded into the upright Calvary cross. And it's the upper cube of time and the lower cube of space is on the right. So we can see the moon glyph, and then we can imagine how by folding the arms of the Calvary cross in on itself to form a cube, the moon glyph on the right arm and the moon glyph on the vertical main body can come together by being folded at the corner and then connected along the edge. And this can be done to form the cubes, both of the cubes, entirely just by cutting and pasting this diagram and by assembling them into three-dimensional solid forms from simple two-dimensional nets. And the three-dimensional solid forms are in the next depiction.
All right.
And I actually have brought props
Oh, wow.
to explain them more.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one, I
Um,
think my 9-year-old daughter Ellie would love that. To cut it
oh, indeed, these are brain
up.
puzzles. These are
Yeah.
these are if you gave these to kids, it would be like playing Mozart to a fetus. I mean,
One,
they're
yes, it'd be great.
they're clearly delightful little brain teaser puzzles at the very, very least. So let's see. This, if I can show it without it being lost in the image, is losing it somewhat. But this would be the double cube.
Hmm.
Um, the double cube, the Kabbalah, when it's separated and then can be conjoined, but when it is conjoined, there's an overlap. So, for example, here the overlap is of Aquarius, yellow glyph on a light blue background. That's the central uh, horizontal bar between the upper and lower cubes. And if we take that as being a conjoining instead of two separate cubes, then the result, well, I may have to turn off my background just to be able to see that. Oh, there we go. The result looks
Hmm.
more like something like this. Oh,
Hmm.
it's so choppy.
There it is.
Yeah. And here we can see again, Aquarius is the yellow glyph on a light blue background, but instead of being the two cubes separated, it's actually just conjoined here in the middle into a single
No.
bar or slat. These cubes are actually made of 32 smaller cubes. So here's one that ought to be able to show up because it doesn't have any color. Let's see. Yeah, this is a larger model of this, and it just makes my face disappear behind it. Curious. It's showing up odd because it's
Right.
there, a
Yeah.
wooden hue. But yeah, this is 32 smaller cubes formed into the Kabbalah of two larger cubes combined into a single double cubed shape, which is ostensibly the original model upon which is based the tree of life diagrams in two dimensions that we've had since at least the Gnostic era 2,000 years ago.
Oh, what a great insight. Now, yeah, it makes even more sense. As long as you don't summon Hellraiser, I mean, Pinhead from Hellraiser will be fine. But yeah,
Well,
this.
that's a great spin-off because that's the great fear of the otherness of this technology is that it can be used for nefarious
Yeah.
purposes, like, for example, ghost traps in Ghostbusters,
Um,
something that you can trap a spirit into, like a talisman or an amulet in traditional ancient superstitious beliefs, and then release it from that in a directed way. These would certainly be a means of representing something similar to that at least, but it's not trapping spirits per se. It's merely labeled with diagrams and symbols that represent cosmic forces.
mm,
So instead of thinking of them as spirits that are uh, trapped inside of the paths on the Tree of Life, it might be just as efficient and more comforting to think of them as just symbols representing higher order cosmic forces, but that don't necessarily entrap them by doing so. In the same way, taking a picture of yourself with a camera doesn't steal
right.
your soul.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, so now we go to the next slide. What do we have here?
And this one is a combination of the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death, or what were in Eden, the Tree of Life and the Tree of Knowledge diagrams, into a single combined tree form. So, in my understanding and estimation and belief,
Mm,
this is the next iteration in understanding the meaning of the Kabbalah as a fourth dimensional shape, metaform, and as the body of God, symbolically speaking. The traditional or Gra version, at least, of the Tree of Life or Tree of Knowledge diagram is here combined with Steve Savidow's representation of the Tree of Death, or what had been originally the Tree of Life diagram. The Tree of Life diagram from Eden is two tetrahedra, just as the Tree of Life diagram we have now is two cubes. If you combine these double tetrahedra with the double cube structure, the result is this diagram, which is color coded to demonstrate how there are 36 paths associated with the 36 colors on this particular spectrum. Um, by conjoining and nesting the Tree of Life in Eden with the Tree of Life now, we assemble a middle pillar that is associated to the seven chakras and relegate the 10 Sephiroth to the pillars of Jachin and Boaz on either side, left or right, of this central pillar. So the Sephiroth along the middle pillar become the seven chakras, which can also be associated with the seven planets or the seven kami, the seven classical planets of antiquity. Um, and the 10 emanations of the 10 Sephiroth then become associated with the combination of the five on the right and the five on the left of the diagram here, representing almost the idea of fingers,
mhm.
again, pulling a string into the lattice-like shape that we can see here. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I'd like to take some questions for a minute so I could take a sip of water if that would be possible
Of course, of
before
course.
going on to the next diagram, because the next set of diagrams are all in black and white, and they're all hand-drawn rough sketches of my own notes that I took from Gnostic works.
All right. I
So
don't,
before we get
yeah,
into that,
yeah, I want, I'm gonna leave it to the audience. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, how are these used? I mean, there's the structures and the concepts, and how are they used in practice? So
Uh,
now you're going to have to talk. So,
no, that's great. In the Golden Dawn system, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn system, they have a double cubic altar that's expressed as the four elements, as the four sides of a top cube. The top surface of the very top cube is a showstone mounting circle or a scrying circle that has some series of sigils on it, or a layman that can be looked through a crystal ball at. And then the lower cube of the double cubic altar in the Golden Dawn practice is the Enochian cube of what is essentially very much more complicated, very much more complex, and latter day extrapolation of Kabbalah into uh, just John Dee's abstract Enochian concepts and constructs. So the double cube of the Kabbalah still remains in the double cubic altar of the Golden Dawn today, but it was likely originally meant to represent a fourth spatial dimensional shape, the tesseract or the hypercube, symbolically, and still does this, although many people might not recognize it as such, but it still does this today in that form as the cubic altar.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a quick question. Um, do you see a separation between, I guess, Judaic, Christian, and Hermetic Kabbalah or Kabbalah, however you want to pronounce it? I mean, I've seen where it'll actually be spelled differently too, just to signify if it's Judaic, Christian, or Hermetic. I'm just wondering if you see that as three separate types of tree of life practices or not. Just kind of your opinion or input on that. I'd appreciate it.
I'd say that they're like three branches on the same trunk of the same tree. So the Kabbalah spelled with a C is the Christian Kabbalah. The Kabbalah spelled with a Q is the Hermetic Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah spelled with a K is the traditional Hebrew Kabbalah. And I would say that these differ in some regards because they're somewhat competitive, but only in the same way that branches on the same tree are somewhat competitive with one another for the same source of light uh, to grow by.
Thank you. I know you mentioned there's like different models. I've seen some with eight Sephiroth, some with 10, some with 13. So I mean, even that varies sometimes too.
Indeed, there's no short supply of the models. I meant to bring out a book too that I got recently that's about the Tree of Life diagrams and the just I believe it's from only the early medieval era until the modern era, but it's an inch thick and it's full of color diagrams and foldouts and everything that a student of this research could possibly imagine. It's a real wonderful book, but I forgot to bring it out.
So what is the ultimate purpose of practicing the tree of life or Kabbalah? Is it to make your life better? Is it to know God? Is it to become some sort of better magician? I mean, or all of the above?
Ostensibly, it should be to better know God, but in the teachings, particularly in the introduction to the Zohar, it rather cautions that a particular side effect of studying Kabbalah can be telepathy. Uh, Telepathy not only with other people, and empathic telepathy to be able to understand people's motives, but telepathy with other species of animals and ultimately even a telepathic understanding of non-animate, inanimate objects, or seemingly inanimate objects just by their supposedly called auric signatures. They're energy fields. Uh, and that can be seen better and better understood through studying Kabbalah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate your input.
Certainly.
Good stuff.
I was going to say, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Where and when do you see this knowledge actually originating?
This is, well, knowledge of this nature is like a cup that's containing the fluid of information itself. So the information itself is older than the cup that contains it. Our knowledge of this trend of the universe, it can only be as old as our experience of life itself. So if we wanted to, we could easily trace this back as far as the origin of life, uh, when the modern popular theory, at least, is that in panspermia there was a seeding event of a interplanetary or possibly interstellar virus-like cellular organism that crashed to Earth and then created all modern life forms out of the elements that were indigenous to the planet. And then according to this theory, all of our ambitions and all of our desires to and aspirations to explore and to invade outer space, so to speak, are just this viral cellular organism trying to find its way back to its home. Um, this may be itself a trend that could be comparable to, or likened at least to the Kabbalah, the shape of a viral cell, like the isosahedral head of DNA attached to a little tube, at the end of which are little pincers. That's very much uh, a template for our own nervous system structure with our limbs and the branching of our nervous system out from our brains at the top. But it's also very similar to not only real trees with their trunks and roots and branches and leaves, but to the metaphorical trees of the fourth spatial dimensional shapes of Kabbalah.
Very interesting. All right, you want to go back to the slides? Or
Yeah, sure. If Are there any more questions?
are there any more questions? I got a few, but let's wait on that. Again, I'd rather the
Sure,
group
sure.
ask questions since I spend most of my life asking questions.
It's a noble pursuit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much wiser I am, but we do what we can. Let's see. Back to the share screen. All right, if hope everybody can see it. So now we go to what, 8.
Yeah,
You can give me some zoom for that. Zoom to that.
this is the exact one that I was hoping that we would be able to zoom in on
All right, can you
because
guys see it zoom?
there it goes.
Awesome.
That's not bad. Oh, that's even better. So this is at the very top of the diagram. If we could scroll down to the bottom.
Sure. You're
Uh,
descending.
Whoops.
Oops, did I go to the other page? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, there it goes. So this diagram in its entirety, I made as a map or a chart of the descriptions given in the Bereshit Beth version of the Zohar. The Zohar, of course, being originally written by Moses de Leon in the 1600s or 14 to 1600s era, Sephardic Spain, and or rather ending in the late 1400s Sephardic Spain. So in the Bereshit Beth version or edition of the Zohar, it's the second book in the 22 volume series, labeled Beth, the first book being labeled Aleph because it's, of course, labeled with letters instead of numbers for the gematria. So the second book being Beth, and it's the second book of the Bereshith, or I'm sorry, the Bereshith is the second book of the Beth uh, uh, volume of the Zohar. So what it describes in that book is in the first level, the afterlife immediately following the death of the body, and what happens in terms of the weighing of the soul, similar to the ancient Egyptian myths. Uh, it describes the first few Sephiroth, Yesod through Chesed,
Mhm.
as I'm sorry, Yesod through Kevra, and associates them with angels who judge different types of people's souls who would live different types of lives throughout, or different types of lives throughout their lifetime. And that's in the very lowest level of the afterlife in the Garden of Eden, of Beriah, of Bereshit Beth in the Zohar. So if we can scroll up, uh, we can see that this is only in the lowest level. It's that of the lower heaven, or the
Stop here.
uh yeah. I'm sorry, it's in the Garden of Eden underneath the lower earth. The highest element in the Garden of Eden is the Zeran pin, which means short-faced. It is the pillar of green, white, red, and black on which our souls are weighed. After that, we can travel through a shared Sephiroth that occupies a space in both the Garden of Eden level of Beriah as well as the lower earth level of Beriah above that, and so on and so forth. This diagram has 4 levels, and it shows the world of Beriah itself out of the 4 Kabbalistical worlds. So this whole diagram is only showing 4 worlds inside of one of the 4 worlds.
Mm.
And within that 4th world, within one of the 4 worlds, it's showing the Sephiroth, but not all 10 of them. It's showing only 6 per each of the 4 within 4 worlds, the 4 worlds in Beriah. And then some of them are overlapped between the realms as bridges to get from the Garden of Eden into the lower earth into the upper earth. And we can scroll up if you want to look at the rest of it. And then from the upper earth into the realms of Beriah itself, and the Abba and the Ima, above all the rest of the emanations in the Bereshit Beth. So this is just some shorthand notation from the Zohar itself.
Wow.
The Bereshit Beth cosmology itself goes on after that and is extremely complicated. It talks a lot about the Shushan flower, and so forth, that Stan Tenen also elaborates on at great and beautiful length with his Kabbalah works of modern Kabbalah. But this is just some very, very short hand notation on this book of the Zohar.
Fascinating. Wow. I'm impressed. All right. So I know the Zohar is not easy to tackle. I've tried. Okay. So we.
Well, I didn't get much deeper into it, to be personally honest. I mean, I liked the studying of the cosmology, and I got as
Right.
far into it as to study about Enoch. in the chronology, in the exegesis, etc.
Mhm.
But after that, I still have the 23 volumes, including the index, that are mostly still plastic wrapped. But I love
Oh,
the Zohar. I would never give it up.
yeah, it's got great stuff. All right, so now we got Before the Fall.
So this is showing what we just saw from the depiction of the Zohar as the realm of Beriah. It's labeled Bereshit B in the middle of the diagram, the very center of the circles, um, where the lower circle of 7 um, longitudes, or is that, no, the 7 latitudes, the 7 latitudes on the lower circle intersect with Beriah above, which shows the same 4 worlds within the 4th world of Garden of Eden, Lower and Upper
Mhm.
Earth, and Abba and Ima in Beriah. And this was when Eden itself, which is the Garden of Eden, is the lowest aspect of the Bereshit Beth cosmology described in the Zohar. This is when the Garden of Eden was still on the earth and man was still in the Garden of Eden. So the 7 latitudes represent the 7 days of creation of Isaiah, the lowest realm, the material realm, the realm of the materially manifest. Um, and at the top of these is the 7th day, in which mankind, or Adam as the prototypical template for mankind, exists inside paradise, inside the natural paradise of the Garden of Eden, because it hasn't yet been removed from us and we haven't yet been exiled from it. So at this time, the Holy of Holies, which is the uppermost aspect from the diagram from the Zohar, connects to the Sephiroth Tree of Life, uh, or Tree of Knowledge, rather, diagram that you can see in the Yetzirah, the realm of Yetzirah above Beriah, um, being depicted as the um, the Sephirah and the Sephiroth uh, of the Zohar's splendor, the splendors of the
Mhm.
Zohar. And then in the realm above that, Atziluth, the realm of creation and the imagination and the design for all of this, there's Ein Sof Or, Ein Sof, and Ayin, meaning nothing, limitless nothing, and bright limitless nothingness. So this is what the cosmology that is basically being described in the Zohar and in the book of Genesis uh, is like diagrammatically depicted, um, as opposed to described verbally. Um, so the tree of knowledge remains in the Holy of Holies, which is aligned with the Garden of Eden, which is still on the surface of Isaiah, the material realm of Earth, as it were, at the time. And man is at the center of it all within the Garden of Eden. So this is before the fall. And then in the next slide, we can see after the fall. And after the fall, we can see that Yetzirah and Beriah have switched places. So now, instead of the Garden of Eden connecting to the 7th day or latitude on Isaiah, or the sphere of Malkuth of the earth, now Yetzirah connects to this directly as the angel with the flaming sword, guarding against the tree of life being accessible, or the tree of immortality being accessible to us uh, within the realm of Isaiah, because now Eden and Beriah and the tree of life or immortality itself have all been elevated to beyond and behind the realm of Yetzirah.
Very nice. It's really cool to see diagrams like these. Definitely puts it
Thank
in
you.
perspective. Yeah. All right. Now, what is going on here? What a
Here's a busy
bottleneck.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a combination of some other source texts than the Zohar and Genesis. Here I'm starting to describe uh, details that are given in the Pistis Sophia
Mhm.
or Eunosis the Blessed, and in subsequent diagrams where we look more closely at the upper part of this, we'll be able to see details that I got from the Apocryphon of John, the Secret Apocryphon of John, as well as from the Book of Raziel,
Mm.
or at least the history of the Book of Raziel, if not inside the text of the actual Book of Raziel itself. In this diagram, what we're looking at is the 7 days of creation along the lowest plane, although we can see and understand these to be latitudes on a sphere. At the center of this is the tree of knowledge combined with the tree of immortality diagram, as I had shown it earlier, with 7 chakras through the
All
middle
right.
pillar. Pardon me.
Yeah, I see it.
And then above that is the diagram from the Zohar that represents the 6 Sephiroth on each of the 4 worlds within the world of Bariah, or the Bereshit Beth cosmology. And then above this, there's a tetractys, although it's distorted, so it's difficult to determine it as such. But it is a grouping of 10 elements in a cluster, and the top 2 elements supersede even beyond Ein Sof, and Ein Sof, and they are the autogenes and the Sophia.
Mm.
And this is where it starts getting Gnostic
Mm.
in particular. So if you go to the next slide, we should be able to see, yeah, this is from the Sophia of Jesus Christ, or Eunosis the Blessed. This is a diagram that just shows some of the traits described verbally there in the text. So we can see the autogenes depicting the first emanation of the Godhead, or rather the Godhead in and of itself, being the creator of the cosmos as we know it, is depicted just as a circle, like a monad, the unmoved mover, and so forth. And his emanation beside him, his first emanation is Sophia, who is called Shekinah, relative to Yahweh Vadhe, as the bride of God. So the autogenes would be the self-created deity, the Godhead itself, and Sophia would be his divine feminine counterpart. And then within Sophia emanates or originates the concept of forethought, a desire to see into the future. So this forethought then manifests itself as Samael or Yaldabaoth,
Mm.
depending on the source text, who is the demiurge of Gnostic, the majority of Gnostic texts, and in some, the world creator. Um, Here he's set against, by name, Pigera Adamas, or Adamus, or Adam, simply meaning King Adam, um, who is seen as a shared manifestation between the autogenes and Sophia. So while Sophia, through forethought, emanates Samael herself, or manifests Samael herself, the autogenes and Sophia come together in union to create Pigera Adamas, or King Adam, or essentially Adam Cadman,
Mm.
as he was later known in specifically Kabbalistic literature. Um, so the traits along the left are simply some Gnostic gobbledygook, some gibberish that was thrown in by whoever was the penman or the scribal uh, uh, writer of the actual Sophia of Jesus Christ, the text itself, um, which may or may not have useful value to subsequent researchers, but to the purpose of our particular exposition here today, we can more or less exclude it and just say it's simply there as a measurement of Ein Sof, and Ein Sof or as layers, and layers within layers and so forth. In the second layer under Pegera Edamas, for example, Adam in Ayin, or in the highest expression of Eden, comes Eve as a mortal,
Mhm.
who then is seduced by Samael, as we understand from Genesis to be representative of the snake, giving Eve the forbidden fruit. And in the Gnostic texts, copulates with Samael to sire Yahweh and Elohim, who are the twin faces, one good and one evil, of the deity that we know of as God in this universe.
Mhm.
So in the Sophia of Jesus Christ and Eunostus the Blessed, our concept of God as the good or evil Yahweh or Elohim, the two-faced kind of God, who's moody and can destroy us or smiles on us regardless of what's happening to us, it seems. This concept we have of God is thrice removed, or three times removed from the original kingdom of the autogenes. So the autogenes being the first emanation of the Godhead, falls then into Sophia, into Samael, and then through Eve from Samael into the modern Godhead of Yahweh and Elohim. And then I think the next diagram's the last one.
Yes.
And this is a mess,
My
but
God. Like the
it's
New Jersey Turnpike or something.
right. It's just a picture in perspective of all the things that we've just been describing. So the autogenes is there, the large bubble at the top. The Sophia, the Pistis Sophia is there as the Barbalo or Noria, the circle on the right, in the upper right, forethought emanating into Yaldabaoth, manifesting into Yaldabaoth or Samael. The first family is depicted as smaller nodes, or just areas or zones on this diagram that can be depicted as
Hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess. That can be depicted as just circles on this two-dimensional depiction. So what we see is the 7 days of creation in Isaiah, then in Bariah, the four worlds of the Garden of Eden, the lower earth, the upper earth, and Bariah itself. And then in between Bariah, because Bariah was still attached to Asaya at that time, in between Bariah and Atziluth, where the autogenes and Barbalo or Sophia dwell, uh, are the or is the tetractys of the 10 first family members: Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Seth, etc. But in particular, it has Adam as Pegera Adamus, or Adam Cadman, being immortal Adam while he was in Eden, as opposed to mortal Adam, or Adam Homo, when he was exiled and became no longer immortal and living forever, but just a normal human being like the rest of us, so to speak. And also Eve is denoted that way as well. She was immortal in Eden when she copulated with Yaldabaoth and sired Cain, Yahweh, and Elohim. And she was mortal when she copulated with Adam to sire Seth. Uh, so this
Mm.
diagram just makes it a little easier to visualize some of these relationships.
Yeah, I've always wanted
Perhaps.
something. Yeah, no, no. It does help. It does help. I've always wanted something, especially with the Sophia of Jesus Christ. And well, people, you thought it was going to be as simple as you died and you went to heaven. It's a big journey up there through those levels, huh? Got a long way to go, and you got to pay your tolls as you go up there. Your brain hurts, and oh, this is great, and I love it. Any questions from you guys?
Yeah, Eve. Who told Eve not to eat the apple in that schema that we just saw? Because I didn't see anything. If Eve copulated with Ialdabaoth, and the other part of the question is, was his seed going into her, was that the substitute for the apple in Genesis? I mean, is that related or is that separate thing?
In my own writings that are a lot more detailed than this and have a lot more diagrams, uh, metaphorically speaking, the fangs of the serpent that was possessed by the devil penetrated into the forbidden fruit, leaked its own poison down into the seed of the forbidden fruit itself. Then, when Eve ate that fruit,
Mm.
she ingested the poison of the snake's venom into her, and that was the manner in which she had copulated with Yaldabaoth in some of the myths, at least. Um,
Doesn't sound like fun.
different strokes for different folks, I
Yeah,
guess.
would you
So
think?
Yeah.
Invite her
who
to
told her not to
Netflix?
eat it? Who told her
Uh,
not to eat the apple?
that was God himself. He said to Adam and I presume to Eve, because at some point she must have been in the garden with Adam and God as well. It was God's instruction that they not eat the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge.
Well, but God, on that diagram, if it was Yahweh and I forgot who the other one was, that was
Elohim.
after Elohim. Yeah, that was after her. She gave birth to them, right? So how could they tell her not to eat the apple when she ate the apple and then gave birth to them?
It wouldn't have been those. Those would be the twin faces of good and evil, representing the binary polarity of God and the duality of God, whereas the autogenes would have been the actual Godhead who gave
Ah,
the command itself.
so the autogenes told her not to eat the apple.
Well, now, if we're going to be very specific, all of the depictions and all of the representations on this diagram are technically faces of or visages of representations of God itself or God himself or herself as an idea. Because God created Adam, he created Eve from Adam's rib and so forth, according to the scripture. And he created the Garden of Eden, he created the trees of knowledge and life, and he created the snake, he created Lucifer or Yaldabaoth, and he created all of these, and knowing that they would do the things that they would do, he created this as an immense trap almost for all of these beings to fall into, wittingly or unwittingly, and they did. And then he basically just sat back, mopped his hands, and said, I told you so. And that's why we've been exiled from paradise and why we think that immortality is being denied to us and we have to hop for it and jump and sing a song for our dinner, when in reality, immortality itself is not that particularly desirable of a goal in a physical form, at least. If we lived on as souls, as energy beings, we could survive even cataclysmic world-ending events that we couldn't survive if we just lived on as fleshly beings of bodies and so forth.
Yeah. All, yeah, iterations and fractals of God doing what he's doing. Ain't nothing but a hound dog, eh? Any other questions from you guys? I just love the fact that I've got those diagrams because,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it explains a lot, and they're great meditation tools too.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, I will have that. I will have those for you guys too, so you can take a look. Of course, you can always do a screenshot if you watch the presentation. But yeah, if you don't have any other questions, I think you pretty much covered everything I wanted to know. So, Book of Raziel, that one, where's that from? That's not Nag Hammadi Library. Where is it from?
No, the Book of Raziel is actually an apocryphal text that was attributed to an angel who lived or existed rather contemporary to the lifetime of Adam after the exile.
Mm,
So after Adam was exiled, he entered the river Gihon, went neck deep until his skin, which had been the equivalent of fingernail texture, all turned into the soft type of tissue that we have now as skin. He lost thousands of cubits in height. Supposedly, Adam was a giant beyond measure
mm,
originally, and after this, he was an ordinary sized person. And while he was praying in the river Gihon, supplicating himself in this manner, hoping that God would forgive him and allow him back into Eden, and he was lamenting having lost all the knowledge that he had had in Eden. The angel Raziel came down and gave Adam supposedly a sapphire stone or a book itself that contained all of the secrets that he had lost when he was exiled, all of the things that he had known in Eden. There's translations of an actual Hebrew equivalent of the Book of Raziel, although it's almost certainly a myth. But in this particular diagram, I labeled it the Book of Raziel because it does seem to describe the way Eden would have looked cosmologically speaking before the fall and before the war in heaven and before the exile, etc.
mm. Fascinating, yeah. And I guess it reminds me of the apocalypse of Adam, where it's Adam telling Seth, this is what happened. I'm giving you the dope, and this is the structure. So these are all fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah, and great job for tackling. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I want to say thank you very much, the Reverend Jonathan Barlow Gee. It's been great. Join Patreon, AB Prime, or Red Circle and get full episodes and podcast summary and other cool bonuses. Clean, edited episodes on a private RSS feed. And no more commercials. Support Aeon Byte.